This is Rosen Institute's Your Law Firm, where Ned Days and Lee Rosen cover management, marketing, finance, and new technologies for building the practice you deserve. Rosen Institute members received this episode early, as well as exclusive segments on evaluating if your client is having a good experience with your firm, and an answer to a member question about what to do in regards to your referral network when you're too busy to take any more business. Get access to everything you're missing at roseninstitute.com/join. Here's Lee Rosen.
It's good to be with you today from the north of India, just outside the gates of the Jim Corbett National Park. We came up here for one reason: tigers. A lot of people drive all of this way up here, and they never even see one. But we were lucky. We saw 5 tigers. But let me tell you what that luck costs. Every day meant hours in the back of an open Jeep, sitting on a seat designed by someone who clearly hates human beings. Cold and wet and sometimes raining, bouncing nonstop over rocks and potholes, questioning our life choices minute by minute. You can't get out of the Jeep because tigers, and you don't want to stay in the Jeep because you're miserable. And then late in the day, out of nowhere, a tiger appears. Once it was less than 10 seconds. Another time, 7 or 8 full minutes. One day, a male and a female walked 15 feet behind our Jeep, close enough that we could hear them breathing as they moved through the forest. And in that moment, all of it just disappears. The cold, the discomfort, the doubt. You're flooded with adrenaline and awe. These animals are magnificent, powerful, graceful, completely indifferent to us. It's been a hard safari, physically uncomfortable, mentally exhausting, but completely worth it, because sometimes the payoff is brief and unpredictable and spectacular. And that's exactly what makes it matter.
It's time for your tech tip. I do a lot of market research, and there is one thing I know you are dying to hear about: API keys for your artificial intelligence tools. Oh yeah. All right, I know most of you have no idea what I'm talking about, so I will try to explain the basics, why you should care, and a very useful service that lets you use any AI model you want in just about any tool you want. The software or service you are using that is relying on these AI models under the hood is essentially sending messages to the AI service provider with the data to process. That might be text or images or video or prompts or whatever else you need the AI to act on, and then receiving the output from the AI service back to the app. Now, you will be shocked to hear that these companies aren't just handling our AI requests out of the goodness of their hearts. They are expecting to get paid. But if I am using a transcription and dictation app on my Mac that is sending the text of what I just said off to OpenAI to summarize it, how does OpenAI know that I have an account they should bill for the service? Some apps will charge you a fee and then take care of the AI billing for you. What most apps do these days, though, is allow you to use your own API key from an AI service like ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini. An API key is basically a long string of semi-random characters that is passed along in the request with the rest of your data that indicates what account should be used for the AI processing and billing. Instead of having to configure complicated authentication workflows or give your username and password to a bunch of third-party apps, the API key is just a single secret string of characters to give third-party tools the ability to use your account. Usually you generate these in your user dashboard. OpenAI makes this fairly easy to get. Google tends to be a little trickier. They have a lot more developer functionality on offer, and creating API keys is kind of confusing. You have to pick features and create projects and all kinds of stuff that's a little daunting. If you've connected third-party tools or desktop apps to your paid ChatGPT account, for example, you have probably gone through this process of copying and pasting your API key. Lots of software and services use this approach, not just AI tools, so you may very well have used this in other circumstances to connect other pieces of software. But beyond some services being trickier than others to access and use an API key, it's incredibly limiting and expensive and inconvenient to have to create accounts and subscriptions for every single AI service that I might want to use. Maybe you are paying for Copilot or ChatGPT, but you want to try out the in-depth research capability in Google's Gemini Pro. Well, on a free plan, you are going to run out of queries really quickly and then get prompted to add an AI package to your Google account. Or what if you want to try out the coding capabilities of Claude's Opus 4.6 without having to sign up for a Claude account? Or maybe you want to try DeepSeek or Minimax or Kimi or one of the dozens of AI models out there. OpenRouter.ai is a service that allows you to get access to just about any AI model you can think of on a pay-as-you-go basis. You sign up, add some credit, and then generate one or more API keys. It's well supported, and just about any tool that lets you bring your own key supports OpenRouter. I use Mac Whisper on my computer to handle both dictation and transcription. When I am dictating, I have it configured to dump the text of what I have said into an AI model for cleanup. I have a prompt for removing filler words, repetitions, turning items I've enumerated into markdown checklists, and adding punctuation. Sending that off to something like GPT 5.2 or Sonnet 4.6 may take 15 to 20 seconds to get back the cleaned up text. And doing that all day would use up a lot of tokens and get a little pricey. So I've configured it to use my OpenRouter account to send my dictations to Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite, which isn't great for research use, but it's really fast, it's cheap, and it's good enough for basic cleanup, so my text appears almost instantly. I don't have a paid Google AI plan, but I can access the model on a pay-as-you-go basis using my OpenRouter account. Now, inside that same app, when I want to do something like summarize the transcript of a YouTube video or a podcast, I can use a slower, more expensive, but more comprehensive model like GPT-5 or Grok 4.1 to generate the summary and ask questions about the context. Another example, I have been playing around with OpenClaw, the tool that is all the rage at the moment. It's a piece of open source software that gives an LLM unfettered access to a computer so that it can install software, send emails, and create code. Frankly, I don't think it really lives up to the hype, but that is a discussion for another day. You communicate with it through your preferred messaging platform like Slack or WhatsApp or Telegram, and you get it to run off and complete tasks for you, or try to complete tasks for you. Now, when I first experimented with OpenClaw, I used my API key from my paid ChatGPT plan, and my dear little robot assistant got so busy doing Lord knows what that about 15 minutes later I had burned through all of my OpenAI credit for the month. So I then used my OpenRouter API key and configured it to access the Moonshot AI Kimi model. It is not quite up to par with GPT for complex tasks, but for emails and reminders and basic stuff, it's quick, it works well, and it is exponentially cheaper if I'm going to have it running stuff all day. One more quick idea on using this, I am using Rocket Typist as my text abbreviation expander, and it lets me run AI prompts as part of my snippets. Now, it only supports OpenAI models, but I can have it use my OpenRouter API key instead of my OpenAI key. The big benefit here is that if I decide to drop my paid ChatGPT plan in favor of Claude or Gemini, because I'm using OpenRouter for pay-as-you-go access, I can still use those ChatGPT models inside of Rocket Typist on a pay-as-you-go basis with my OpenRouter credit. Now, if you are interested in experimenting with some of these different models, but you don't know where to start, Jan.ai is a free and open source desktop app that acts a lot like the ChatGPT or Claude desktop apps. You can have chats, create projects, even give it control of the Chrome web browser. You can do this using free local AI models if your computer is powerful enough, but you can also add an API key from your AI service of choice. If you do that with an OpenRouter key, you get access to their entire library of models, every iteration of GPT, Gemini, Opus, Sonnet, DeepSeek, Llama, Qwen, Grok, Mistral, and dozens of others. So how exactly does all of this work? Well, OpenRouter gives you quite a few options on how things can be configured. You can create one or more API keys in your dashboard. You can configure them to have limits on how much credit they can consume, and if you want that limit to be reset on something like a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. I've created a key for my transcription app and a different key for my OpenClaw computer so that I can tell which one is using how many tokens and credit and put limits on it if I want to. Most apps that support OpenRouter allow you to specify which model you want to use. OpenRouter also lets you set a default model or use their auto-select service, which chooses a model based on your prompt. Now, regardless of whether you are using auto-select or you have picked a particular model you want to use, when your request is sent to an AI provider, it is passed off to one of many services that are hosting instances of the AI model that you've chosen, based on latency and on cost. It's a bit like choosing from 30 different gas stations on the fly, depending on price and proximity. Now, that of course brings up the issue of privacy, and thankfully you have a lot of privacy settings to make sure you are only using services that you are comfortable with. There are services that offer free AI models, but they might train on your data or publish your prompts. So you can set your account to only use providers that have zero data retention policies. You can also configure guardrails to obfuscate things like email addresses, phone numbers, social security numbers, credit card numbers, names, and addresses in data that you're passing in. As more and more of the tools we use on a regular basis and brand new tools allow us to connect to our own AI provider, OpenRouter is a very convenient way to not just keep billing under control, but to use the best model for the task at hand without needing dedicated monthly subscriptions to every single one. I'm Ned Days, and that's your tech tip. And now for your moment of concise advice. I struggle to plan my time. Now, I know plenty of attorneys who are machines when it comes to time management. They don't always feel like they are as productive or as effective as they would like, but things are planned and scheduled like clockwork. And I know plenty of others who are a little closer to my end of the spectrum, or worse, they feel like they just have no control. Now, I also know quite a few lawyers who tell me that they go into the office in the morning without a plan for what they are going to do that day, and they are not doing that by accident. They are doing that deliberately because they have tried to make plans. They have heard the conventional wisdom, plan the night before, set one big agenda item, work on that first. They've tried it all, and they have found that it just doesn't work in a law practice, or maybe in their law practice. So they have resigned themselves to walking into the office and seeing what happens. They know that they can expect a crisis of some kind. They are assuming they will be greeted with a phone call or a Teams message from somebody who is upset or who is going to disrupt their best made plans. So they don't bother making any plans. They just jump into the mix and start fighting the battles one after another. And I get it, especially in the legal profession. There are a lot of people with claims on your time and your calendar. Judges, there are court dates, clients, there are some circumstances where you just have to drop everything. You are obligated. But it's also easy to let those intrusions cause you to give up on the control that you still do have. Your belief may be that there is always going to be a crisis or some kind of emergency, and that those crises and emergencies are unpredictable. And therefore you can't stick to a plan ever at all. I would take the position that those emergencies are predictable to some degree. You know that you are going to have those crises and emergencies. You just don't know exactly when they are going to strike, but you do know that they are coming. That's what you have learned from years of practicing law. The disasters spring up out of nowhere, whether you are a litigator or a transactional attorney. Things just happen. So instead of surrendering entirely to the chaos, I would suggest you reframe the way you plan. Think of your plans in blocks or modules that you can shift around the crises and emergencies that you know with absolute certainty are coming. Think of the crisis as normal. It's not unexpected, it's expected. That's kind of how you're operating already. So build them into the plan so that your big projects and objectives keep moving forward. The elements of your plan have to be flexible, shiftable, subject to reorganization. The elements of your plan need to be movable so that they can shift around as the schedule changes, as these emergencies pop up. If you don't do this, if you don't plan and build the disruptions into the plan, then what happens is that you languish. You just don't make the progress on the big objectives that you need to. Those big projects, the changes that you want to make in your practice, they don't happen. Now, the hardest part about planning, whether you are doing it in a flexible manner or not, isn't creating the plan. The hard part of planning is that you have to figure out what to prioritize. You have to pick the few things that you are going to do that day or that week, and most importantly, you have to pick what you are not going to do. that throws most of us off. We can pick the few things we know that we are going to do, but we then struggle with the things that we are not adding to the list. Priorities are tough, not because of what we put at the top. They're tough because of the things that we have decided not to do. Knowing that we are going to put something off, knowing that we have decided it is not important right now, is shockingly difficult. And that difficulty is compounded if we are reactive people. My default state is just to wait for somebody to tell me what to do. I don't want to tempt fate, but I really do feel like I am cut out for a life in a penal colony where I am just told to move piles of rocks around or dig a ditch. There's a certain satisfaction to being given a shovel and having somebody point at a pile of rubble and just having at it. But this also manifests itself in thriving on the chaos of a practice. People are coming to you all day asking you questions, asking how to do something, asking what to do, and we can very easily convince ourselves that things have to be that way. We can't say no, we can't block off time, we can't be unavailable because the whole thing will crash and burn if we do. And to some extent, it makes us feel important and useful when we are constantly in the fray, answering questions and taking up slack for people. So for most of us, when we are operating without a plan, what we're doing is spending our days responding to what we think of as emergencies. And real emergencies do show up time to time, but mostly the emergencies that take away our days are things that we choose to do instead of doing the things we know need to be done. So here is what I would encourage you to do. Pick a time, Sunday night, Friday afternoon, whatever works for you, and create a plan for the coming week. While you're doing it, create a detailed plan for one day. Maybe it's Monday, maybe it's Tuesday, but just pick a day where you are in control. Then spend a few minutes the day before planning that day ahead. If you get to the point where you can do that for 2 days or 3 days, fantastic, stick to it. But you don't have control of any of your days right now, so let's just start with one. Now, a couple of practical thoughts on putting this together. First, when you make your plan, don't just write it down or add it to a task list. Block off the time on your calendar. You have made a commitment to yourself. Don't let yourself schedule over that commitment, and don't let others on your staff take that time away from your priorities either. Put everything on the calendar so that it belongs to you. Second, limit the items in your plan very, very tightly. I remember many years ago watching a video by some productivity guru or guy who claimed to be a productivity guru, and he really harped on the idea of limiting what he was doing in a day. He was adamant about not having more than 4 items on his task list for a workday. Now, this seemed silly to me. I always had about 24 things on my list, but this guy was stripping it way down, and he said that he needed to keep it really limited so that he knew that those things would get done. And if something didn't get done, he'd better have a really good reason. And it occurred to me that even though I had dozens of items on my list, they didn't get done. There were plenty of days where not a single item came off of my list. I could convince myself that they were all part of some big, complicated project, and maybe there was some marginal improvement on each or a few, but when there is too much going on, our bandwidth is maxed out and nothing gets through. And when there are too many items, not a handful that demand accountability, we are a lot more likely to push them off and let the chaos of the day expand to fill our time. Some people take this even further. One item per day, one thing that grabs your attention, keeps you focused, and one thing usually gets done. If you finish it early, great. You can move up to tomorrow's item and start working on that. It's a powerful approach because it means letting go of a lot of other things, but one thing on the list means one thing gets done. And if there is one thing on your list and it's not complete by the end of the day, you have a lot to answer for, even if it's just to yourself. Maybe that is a step too far for you right now, but limit the list tightly and don't be afraid to be ruthless about it. So make a plan. Start thinking about your week in terms of building blocks toward productivity, but be sure to build in room for disasters that you know are coming. Pick a day that's yours, keep the list short, and do it over and over until it sticks. That's your moment of concise advice.
Thanks for spending a few minutes with me and Ned today. We hope you have a great weekend and an even better week next week. Keep plugging away, moving forward, and getting things done. You're on the right track. You'll get there, I promise. We're all in this together, and together we build better practices through better marketing, better management, and better technology. Until next time, I'm Lee Rosen.
Thanks for listening to Your Law Firm. Subscribe to the Friday File at roseninstitute.com and join thousands of other lawyers who are working on instead of in their businesses. You'll find safe, successful, actionable approaches for transforming your practice. Join us today at roseninstitute.com.